Welcome everyone. As usual, I'll make a few announcements to allow people to join, because I give these notifications on my Instagram, on my Facebook fan page called Yogi Chris PhD about these live events. So I'm sure people will tune in as we get going. Briefly, obviously, Friday podcast, guys, tune in. A lot of the questions I receive they're a lot easier to answer in person, or at least as a secondary, a close second would be, voice to voice on the phone. And the podcast is an opportunity to call in, really get my take on what your question is, but also Arash's, who is a master linguist. And so even my explanations sometimes get kind of cluttered with a lot of jargon, and because that's how I learn, that's how I like it. So he helps simplify that. So definitely tune into that. What we're going to cover today is a little bit limited because I don't have like a camera person. I'm not going to be able to show lateral views, jumping, and things like that. I'm a big advocate, let me step back a little, a big advocate of the Ashtanga Vinyasa system, which is a set sequence of postures. It always starts the same. You have, is Chris your birth name? Yes, Christopher. And it's always the same set sequence. It's some sun salutations, some B variation sun salutations, some standing poses, seated poses, or the meat of the practice, whatever is those poses, and then closing poses, which is like a shoulder stand, a headstand, and then you lay down, relax, or maybe you do some pranayama. Okay, so we're focusing on the first part of the first chunk of that, which is the standing poses, which is fundamental to all the other poses. And a lot of what I'm going to teach, two things I'll say about it. One is a lot of the language and the template. Posture is a physiological template superimposed on an energetic template. You have an energetic fingerprint that is your posture, and in that energetic fingerprints are things like your chakras, your nadis, the khandha, and other subtle body organs, your aura, whatever. And so this isn't a lecture of how to gain awareness of the thumbprint of your finger, of your energy body, your energy print. And we can do that another time if you'd like that. You comment and I'll take you through that exercise. I actually did that as part of my PhD. I took everyone in the room through that exercise and got a lot of good feedback. So a lot of that, the language and the template for the posture comes from David Garrigues. Okay, so definitely check out his channel. And I trained with him in India, but also it's integrated with my mind, my concepts, my anatomy, my knowledge of anatomy, and so on. The second thing I'll say is, like the title suggests, it's advanced fundamentals. So this isn't necessarily easy stuff, but it's very beginner fundamental stuff that will translate into all your yoga postures. And indeed, as a lot of people would say, just in posture in general, just in life, you don't have to be doing yoga to be working on your posture. And your mind is more free and able to move when your posture is more free. When your mind is not occupied with holding tension or supporting a faulty structure. A bridge can be supported if it has, shitty engineering, but it's not very efficient. And a gust comes by or too much traffic on top of the bridge and it doesn't support that. So we want to have the optimal, most efficient posture, which means, efficient means the least effort to sustain it. So part of that second note, it's advanced, and what is coming out on October 1st is the Heart Seal. What comes out November 1st will be the second part of the Heart Seal, which is for the lower body, and these give you the sensations of these datums in your body that I'll be referring to, but I'm going to do my best to keep the anatomical jargon to a minimum, and all of that's leading towards part 3 of Samyama, which is the detailed variation of what I'm giving to you today, which is going to have to do with datums of the body. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It's going to be maybe 20-25 minutes, and I'm going to be way back there, so I'll try to speak up. And as usual, at the end, if you have any questions or comments, you just type them at the end. I'll answer them. Okay, so come onto your mat or wherever you are. You don't need a yoga mat, and you can't see my feet, but you can see my knees. What's super important is your kneecaps face forward, or that the kneecaps are reflections of each other. So if one kneecap turns out 30 degrees, the other one should turn out 30 degrees. Don't be attached to the kneecap orientation being the foot orientation. The foot does not necessarily orient with the knee. and that's called tibial torsion, but a lot of people have it, and in fact most people have it. It's actually really, really rare not to encounter someone with tibial torsion, which means the foot is not pointing the same direction as the kneecap. But we want the kneecap to face forward, because then the femur bones, the femur, the thigh bone, does face the same direction as the kneecap. And so where the kneecap's pointing is where the femur is pointing, which is kind of obscure to think about because the femur is a shaft. But think of just the front line of the femur, that points where the knee points. And so if one femur is pointing in a different orientation than the other femur, then all of that goes into the hips, and then that's asymmetry, and then you'll be stretching your hips asymmetrically. But your hips are a symmetric structure, side to side. It is. Your left is symmetric to your right. So you want your femur symmetric, so you want your kneecap symmetric, not necessarily your feet. Okay, so you look down, your knees are facing forward or the same direction. Quick, easy way to assess is without any effort, you bend your knees slightly, and notice, do your knees go straight forward? Or do they buckle in? Do they go out? It's important, you got to be honest with yourself, that you're not trying to make them go straight forward, but that you relax the hips, relax the knees, relax the ankles, orient your knees what you think is facing forward, and then just bend the knees. And so I had turned my knees a little too far in there because they kind of went towards each other. So right there, straight forward. Good. Now here we need to orient our sense of foot arch, and that foot arch, it translates into so many joints in the body. There are arches in the connective tissues of the knee, the base of the knee, of the base of the pelvis, called the floor of the pelvis. The diaphragm is a kind of arch, it's a foot arch, and the glottis and the palate. And so these are all arches of connective tissue you could think of that starts with the foot arch. If the foot arch is collapsed, chances are all those others are collapsed too. So how you're standing now, go ahead and intentionally collapse the foot arch. So you're standing, if you slouch, you just acknowledge and recognize what a normal, completely relaxed posture would feel like. And then from here, spread the toes wide, grip the ground with the toes, and then lift the toes really, really high. And feel the foot arches lift. As you lift the toes wide and high, and then notice here, so you hold this, notice how your knees, they feel lighter. Your hips, they feel lighter. Your chest, the energy is going up into your chest, your head, and then release the toes and feet down, and go ahead and collapse the foot arches again. Go back to normal slouchy standing. Notice how the chest gets heavy, the hips get heavy, knees, they might more pressure on the inside or the outside, the feet, they're flat, you're flat, you're heavy. So go ahead, spread the toes again, lift the toes wide, feel the inside of the ball of the foot push down, and the outside of the heel of the foot push down. The toes are wide and high, and you feel the arch of the foot lift. The knees lift, the hips lift, the chest, diaphragm, throat, head, it lifts. Now, keep the arch lifted of the feet as you gently descend the toes down. So the arch of the foot feels lifted, the toes are down. Go ahead and lift the toes again. Feel how that reanimates the foot arch. And then lower the toes down, keep the arch lifted. So this is the exercise for the next 15 or 20 reps. Lift the toes to re-clarify the foot arch, but keep the foot arch as you lower the toes. Press down through the inner ball of the feet and press down through the outer heel of the feet. Continue doing repetitions, toes wide. Lift the toes, feel the arch clarify. Release the toes, maintain that sense of arch. Many repetitions. Notice any differences. Maybe the left is higher or lower. Notice as you lift and lower the toes, you clarify that center point, that plumb line of balance right over your feet. That's important. As you do standing poses in yoga, I'm continuing to do reps. As you do standing poses in yoga, you continue to clarify that line of support, that power line as they call it in acrobatics, of bone stacking, so that posture becomes effortless. Go ahead and release. part of the theory of what we're doing is the idea that yoga is not 700 different poses. It's not 7,000 different poses. It's not even 2 different poses. It's one single pose with variations. Okay? Really embrace that idea that we're finding a solid alignment, which is it's a concept in your mind. Your body doesn't need to be in a straight line to have alignment. So the alignment is an energetic feeling on the inside. So we're cultivating that single position, which is a consciousness that also has a seat in the body. Seat is translated as asana. Asana means seat, which is the posture. It's the third limb of yoga. So we're cultivating that single position so that we have a reference. And then when we do all the other poses of yoga, we're really just doing variations of the first original single position, which is a consciousness. Okay? So we have the foot arches, we have the knees. Go ahead, bring your hands to your hips. And we're going to do 6 different motions here. So the first is lift the right hip. So we do this, bend the left knee, so the right hip goes high. I'm obviously a mirror image of you. I don't do that thing yoga teachers do where they reverse it, and I lift my right hip, but I say it's left, so that you just do your right hip. Right hip goes high, okay? And then do the left. So become familiar with this ability, that the left hip can go higher than the right. The hip that's dropping, you bend that knee. The hip that's raising, that knee is straight. Okay? Right hip, left hip. Right hip. Okay. Second direction, I'll go ahead and do it sideways, is, as you might have guessed, it's a tuck the tailbone. So I'm trying to flatten and broaden the lower back. I might bend the knees because what I'm looking for is pelvis. That is, if you take your hands to the sides of your thighs, below your hips, at the base of your butt cheek, there's a bone. I mean, it's the thigh bone, but there's this like bony protrusion, a knob. Okay? And then if you go to the top of your pelvis, there's like this rim almost. It's the top of your hip. So these 2 points between this bone on the side of your hip and the top rim of your hip, that's the pelvis. So we're looking for articulation between this space. If the knees bend, the chest bends, that's fine. I just want tuck the tailbone under and then poke the tailbone out. So I'm going through this. This would be hip extension, hip flexion, or what you might call hollowing and arching in handstand training. So become familiar with that. You can go forward and back with the pelvis. Okay, good. That's probably easy. So the last one is going to combine the 2. Okay? So if I take the left hip higher, but combine with that hip flexion. So it's almost like how maybe a female might pose or something like that. So it's what this is a contraction of the quadratus lumborum, which is a lower back muscle. So I want at an angle. It's not straight out to the side. It's not straight back, but it's back and at an angle, which is technically a rotation of the pelvis. Go back to neutral, and then the right hip higher, but also squeeze that right lower back. Back to neutral, do the left side. Neutral, do the left side. This is a very advanced and yet fundamental way to warm up all the joint complexes, all the joints around the hips. Okay, good. So we're going to combine all 3 or 6 movements, all 3 pairs of movements. So just stand, hands to your hips, feet a little bit wider than they were, so hip width. Feel the arches lift. Now maybe the toes stay down or the toes lift, but just feel the arches lift, toes spread wide. Now your hands are on the hips. Go left hip higher, tuck, so tailbone in front, right hip higher. Now go back at that rotation, so it's an arching, but it's also the right hip higher. Now go straight back, so it's an arch, diagonally back to the left, and then left hip higher. hips tuck under, right hip higher, diagonally back to the right, straight back, diagonally back to the left, left hip higher. Go ahead and make sure you stop at each place. So don't make it like a really fluid Latin movement. Pause for a brief moment in each location and clarify as much as you can of the pelvis. Feel deeply. Drop your tongue and create space in the soft palate. From that space is where the seat of consciousness resides. When we talk about single position, that's the single position, is that space over the soft palate. Everything else we're doing with our body is to train ourselves to maintain that single position of consciousness over the soft palate while in the midst of physical turbulence. Go ahead and go the other direction. So tuck the pelvis, left hip higher, diagonally back to the left, straight back, diagonally back to the right, right hip higher, tuck. And pause briefly at all 6 locations. Left hip higher, diagonally back to the left, straight back, diagonally back to the right, right hip higher, tuck. All 6 positions. Go ahead and do 1 or 2 more rounds. Good. Release it. Awesome, guys. I saw someone commented. Let me see. How do you do this? You're welcome. Okay, so two more datums that we need is the floating ribs. And I mentioned I'm not going to do jargon, but the floating rib and the first rib shouldn't be jargon for you. You should know, every human should know that, is it harder than it seems? Wow, maybe I'm just that good. Every human should know that there's 12 ribs on the rib cage. And 12 is a magical number, right? And so the bottom 3 are floating, meaning they don't, all of these, they wrap up and they connect, the top 9 connect to the sternum. The bottom 3 are called floating because they don't connect to the sternum, they just kind of end halfway around. So somewhere in there, somewhere of rib 10, 11, or 12, that's the floating rib circle. You determine it. You decide. Which one do you want to be the floating rib circle? And just imagine a horizontal plane there. And then the first rib, which we covered in the Facebook lesson last night, under the collarbone. You can also, if you feel, which reminds me I didn't cover that yesterday, so here you go, here's a bonus. If you can feel like it helps to tuck the chin, and then everybody has this bone that sticks out there. I have it actually especially pronounced. People with like humpbacks have a huge kyphosis, and then some people don't have it very much. But if you tuck the chin and really protract and wrap the scapulas around, which means like really collapse the chest, you can feel there's a bony protrusion at the top of the back. Okay, so if you find that bone, which is vertebra, and you go 1 down, 1 lower, so you're on that bone, and you go into the joint space between that one and the next one. There's the first rib from the back. And then you find the space between the collarbones, and you go 1 joint down. You can feel it if you touch down your sternum, that where the ribs come in, there's a space between each one. So you want to find that first space. So there's the one below the collarbone, go 1 more down. Okay? Let me turn this way. This is the first rib circle. Notice how much it slants down on me, and I have an open chest. Everybody's do. The ribs slant down as you move forward. But this is the first rib circle, so you could do this to become aware of where is your first rib circle. Even I like to dig my nails in so that I really feel it, so when I remove my hand, I still continue to feel it. And it's, there's the first rib circle. Okay, so we have the floating rib circle, the level of the kidneys, and the first rib circle. Now, here's a secret. I don't know why I'm giving all of this right now, but it's because I want you to excel. I want to be able to teach you more higher level stuff. This is basics. This should be taught to 4-year-olds and well, maybe 6-year-olds because there's some anatomy. But okay, so here's the key: is the bottom of the shoulder blade. Okay, that's not an anatomy term. The scapula is the anatomy term. The shoulder blade, everybody knows they have shoulder blades. The shoulder blade is the shape of a right angle triangle. Okay, and so there's 2 of them. The right angle is on the upper inside corner. And so, but there's a bottom angle. That's actually what it's called, is the bottom angle of the scapula. So let's do some shoulder pumps. Take the arms overhead. You can have fingers outstretched or make fists. Lock the elbows as straight as possible. Okay? Arms overhead. We're going to do 2 sets. Keep the feet close together and lift the arches like we've already talked about at the beginning. If you missed that part, you go back. And take the arms forward and back. It's a pump. It's a shoulder pump. If you want to combine breath, you can. But really key is that space in the soft palate. Drop the tongue, flatten and broaden the tongue, and create a sense of spaciousness right behind the tongue above the soft palate. Go ahead, just do a few more and release. Okay, so now that you get the gist of the exercise, I'll explain one more thing and then we're going to do it again. And we're going to do the first position. Oh, I'm so excited to get to this. This is it. This is the last technique. We're going to use shoulder pumping to clarify the bottom of the shoulder blade. Okay? So we have the floating rib circle, the first rib circle, and then halfway between the two is what I call the heart rib circle. The level of the heart, and it's the spiritual heart, so don't get too caught up in where is the heart's more on the left. The center, just think of it as the center. C6 or T6, T7, which is the middle thoracic, that junction, that horizontal plane, that's the heart rib circle. So you got 3 in the ribs. The floating rib circle, and that's when you get people that like banana back, you pull in the floating ribs. Tuck the tailbone forward, pull in the floating ribs. That's fixed. First rib circle, that's where we covered yesterday, where tight pec minor and people round. Okay, so let's bring the front of that up and the back of that down. Great. Okay, so in between the two, there's the heart rib circle. The heart rib circle is at the level of the bottom of the shoulder blade. So the shoulder blade's this right angle. The bottom angle of it, the bottom corner, that's at the level of the heart rib circle. When you get all 3, the first rib circle, the heart rib circle, the floating rib circle, and you can, with your mind, clarify their alignment, meaning make them horizontal to each other, or parallel to each other rather, because they're all slant downward, all the ribs slant down. That's when you get really profound awareness of this midsection, which is super important for our Western call. Everybody's cut off at the neck or they're at the groin. You know, they got balls or whatever. But they're not feeling what's going on in their core. The beginning of spiritual realization, of Kundalini awakening, of great lovemaking, of intuition, is becoming aware of what is going on in my feeling body right here, which is first rib circle, heart rib circle, third floating rib circle. Okay? So now, we're going to do it again. Shoulder pumps. I'll stand to the side so you can see. The emphasis, 2 emphasis. 1, space in the soft palate. Drop the tongue, move it back. This is Kechari Mudra, easy variation. You're just creating space. Sukha is space. Okay, it's a Sanskrit term. More space behind the uvula, which is that thing that hangs down. That's the first emphasis. Second one is find the bottom corner of your shoulder blade as you do these. I'm going to do maybe 100. If you get too tired, you stop before. Maintain breath. Space behind the throat and find the bottom angle of the scapula. Okay, feet are close together. Maybe they're touching. Lift the foot arches. Tuck the tailbone forward and up. Arms up. Lock the elbows. Shoulder pumps. Find the bottom angle of the scapula. Yes, I'm finding it now. The bottom corner of the shoulder blades. Find that floating rib circle, that first rib circle right under the collarbone. Remember that thing I had you touch in the back? There's the first rib. Make these, the front of the ribs move up, the back of the ribs move down. Create space in the back of the throat. Move the back of the head up, tuck the chin towards the throat. Soften the forehead. Okay, relax. That was amazing. I love it. Okay, so we're going to do first and second position, which is in the Ashtanga Vinyasa system, each movement is counted. And so a Sun Salutation has 9 positions. position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You arrive back at the beginning, and then it cycles, hence a vinyasa. Sun Salute B has 17 positions. Okay, so we're just doing first and second position, which is in all systems of Hatha Yoga. It's basically standing and then arms up. That's first position, second position. Okay, but it's the intelligence that you bring to it. Anybody, an autistic person could bring, that's not to knock autistic people, but that what distinguishes the yogi is the intelligence and presence that you bring to what you're doing. Fully embody it, okay? All right, so we really spread the palms, extend through all the fingers, and let the fingers be an extension of the forearm, and the forearm be an extension of the upper arm, and the upper arm be an extension of the shoulder blades, and the shoulder blades be an extension of the palate. The single position, the seat of consciousness, reaching. So take your first position, which is feet close together, or maybe they're touching, kneecaps face forward, just like we've covered. Foot arches slightly lifted, do like 50%, but keep the toes on the ground. So learn to lift your foot arches without lifting the toes. And you go back to the beginning, the first 10 minutes were about that. Okay, so now reach down without closing the chest. Reach down through the fingers, keep the collarbones bright and tall. Now, as you inhale, you will turn the arms out. Keep reaching through the fingers. Keep reaching. Come to halfway. You should still feel that reach. My palms are facing up right now. Spreading the palms, reach through the fingers. Keep the tailbone tucked. Feel the shoulder blades stamp into the rib cage. In and up. Go ahead, take the arms up. Maybe the palms stay separated or they come together. So here's your opportunity. Create space behind the soft palate and locate the bottom angle of the shoulder blades as you lift the foot arches. And then do the reverse. So turn the palms face out. Exhale as you lower. Keep the reaching. It's reaching throughout the whole time. And then back to the original position. Okay, so I'll show from the side. It's ideal to keep the arms in the plane of the body. But sometimes if you have a shoulder injury or something, that might not be comfortable. So it's okay to take the arm in front slightly. In Pranayama Part 1, I'll even show you how to stay under the acromion. And this would be my arms up. But we're going around and going up. So ideally you go straight out to the side. Maybe you move forward just a little bit. Arms to the side. Foot arches softly lifted, toes on the ground. Pull down with the back of the pelvis. The floating ribs come in. The top front of the first rib moves up. The cheekbones move down. Reach down with the fingertips. Spread the palms. Turn the palms face out. Reach out. Slowly inhale as you come up. Stay here for a moment and clarify your foot arches. Clarify the space behind your soft palate. Clarify the bottom angle of your shoulder blade. As you exhale, turn the palms face out. Straight arms, reach the whole time. Reach with intelligence. Good. So we're going to do two more, and then we'll do two on your own. So this next one, we're going to go medium speed. That was super slow speed. We're going to go medium speed now. Actually, I'll just go ahead and demonstrate. So there's medium speed, fast speed. I'll demonstrate all three. Okay? So here's slow. Medium. Rapid. Okay. But in all of them, arches lift, tailbone tucks, reaching, spreading, all of the datum, space in the soft palate. So important. So go ahead and do 2 or 3 repetitions on your own, and then we'll close it out with coming back together. So it's just arms up on the inhale, arms down on the exhale, and all of the things we've worked on: foot arches, knees, shoulder blades, ribs, palate, and the extension. So go ahead, I'll give you a minute. Good. Okay, so this is the end of the lesson, and we'll close out with an Om. I'll check and see if there's any questions. Play with also velocity in your yoga practice. So you can move fast, you can move slow, you can move medium. It's your choice. Just know that a change in velocity in the middle of a movement is mind activity. So make up your mind and do it. And then recalibrate afterwards. Maybe you went too fast, too slow. Adjust, but don't adjust in the motion. Adjust after when you think about it. Okay? So let's see if there was any. Your advice is very helpful. It's a little harder than it seems. Good. That means you're really investing effort. And that's the end. Oh, someone. No? Okay. I'll give this piece right now. If there's something hurting on your body, or if there's something that you have a burning desire that you want to learn, I won't guarantee that I teach it. I won't even guarantee that I know how to do it. But definitely you comment, and I'm here to offer. So I'm going to close out with an Om. Feel free to join or just listen. I'll take a normal breath first. Namaste. Also notice when I Om, I create space. I do the Kechardi Mudra. And I must, in good conscience, also recommend that if you found this helpful, get on the silent flute. I go way deeper into it, and it's a lot more customized information for you. So you go to ninthlimb.com, you sign up for that, and I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.